hi everybody, welcome to this webinar where we're going to be exploring the APM PMQ exam and some tips from myself and my colleague Helen, typical pitfalls and keys to success. There are two really big pieces of advice that I want to give you. It's kind of if you don't take anything else away, I think that these are two that I think are really important. The first one is the APM PMQ is an exam that assesses your knowledge. So your mindset going into this exam is, I have to show what I know. So a lot of people don't. If you don't show the knowledge that you have, APM won't be able to prove, or they won't be able to see that you have it, then they can't give you the marks. So that has to be your kind of your mindset as you go into this. This is about me showing the knowledge that I have. And the second thing that I want you to have in mind as we go through this is APM wants you to succeed in the exam. And they're giving you the information and the tools for you to do that. So it's just about now, all right, how can we make sure that we set you up for success and that you can show the knowledge that you have in the right way? Okay, but keep those in the back of your head through your preparation. Right, but with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Helen a little bit. We're going to start with an overview of the exam and some key things to be aware of. Helen, take it away.
Lovely, thanks, Karin. Hi, everyone. Yeah, we're going to have a look at the exam, what it's all about. You know, just to get a feel for the structure of it. So everything that we're going to talk about is available in the APM PMQ Handbook. So those of you that do the exam with Wellington, this is actually available for you on the LMS. Otherwise, you can get it directly from the APM website. So we've got the link here, and Nicole's very kindly popped that into the chat as well. So you have it in two places. Next one, please, Karin. Thank you. So the way that the exam is structured is slightly different to how it's been previously. So essentially what you have is you have the exam in two parts. So you have 40 questions, and it's in what we call a mixed format. We'll talk about what we mean by mixed format in a second. But essentially question one, part one, is made up of 20 questions. So you get an hour and 15 minutes for part one to answer 20 questions. Some of them will be multiple choice, some of them will be picked from a list. I call those the blankety blank questions, showing my age. You have some short form answers, you have some longer form answers, which I'm going to talk about how you structure those. It'll be a mix of topics, so it's not going to be running through the syllabus. You'll have a mixture of both the question styles and the topics. After an hour and 15 minutes, this part of the exam will lock, and you get a 30-minute break. A big piece of advice here, don't move your second device that you're using for a camera, because otherwise you'll have to do your setup all over again, and there isn't really time available, so you'll lose time. So we advise you to come back at about 25 minutes, and then part two will unlock. So after 30 minutes, part two will unlock. So you need to make sure you're back and ready to start again. So part two is similar, 20 questions, an hour and 15 minutes. Again, it's in that mixed format, so and mixed topics. You may get some topics that you've had from in part one, you may well not. So again, you will have those questions through. So essentially, these questions cover the 24 competencies that are that make up of the APM's competence framework. So these are the things that are expected of a project management professional with that minimum of 2 to 3 years experience that we recommend. Now, there's no fixed pass mark here. We often get asked, what's the pass mark? How many do I need to get to pass? We can't tell you that as much as we would like to. Basically, you have 3 papers. Each paper has a very slightly different pass mark because it's a different difficulty. So they use a method called the modified Angoff method. So the pass mark will vary depending on which paper you get. Next one, please, Karin. So I mentioned that we cover 24 competencies. There are actually 29 competencies in the framework itself, but only 24 of them are relevant to the project manager, and those are the ones that the APM will be examining you on. So essentially what you have is you have the overall competency framework, which is split into 4. So you have setting up for success, preparing for change, people and behaviours, and then your planning, management and deployment. 24 of those are the competencies. The APM calls those our learning objectives. And then within those learning objectives, they're split out into learning outcomes, of which there are 73. This is where the questions come from. So essentially, this is almost your revision guide. It's telling you what you need to know for the exam. So as Karen said, they're setting you up for success. They're telling you what they are going to test you on. And so this is how we lay it out. You will also see this in the APM's study pack. So you will have your learning objective, and then we have the learning outcomes underneath. So you can see it on the right-hand side, how we have it in our slide deck, and on the left-hand side, you can see how it appears in the study pack. So every module starts with that overview, so you can see exactly what it is that you need to be learning. So let's have a look at those question types. So as I said, there's 4 main question types. The first one is multiple choice. So multiple choice is your dead usual question statement, and you select the correct option by clicking it. You get 4 options, A, B, C, D, and you just choose the one that you think is correct. They are worth 1 mark, and you get about 20 of them. So there's no negative marking. You are either right or you're not. Second type of question is the select from a list. So often you'll have a statement with some text missing, and you need to choose both parts of, or the correct part of the statement. Usually about 5 of those, and they are worth 2 marks each. We then have what we call short response. So with these ones, they want a word or a phrase or a sentence. So often they will say state or outline. So they don't want lots and lots of detail, but they do want you to give enough to show that knowledge, to show that you're not just quoting a bunch of words, that you're actually, you actually know what you're saying. Again, 5 questions roughly of these, and these ones are worth 2 marks each too. Then we have what we call the long response. Now, sometimes these are split out into kind of 3 marks and 2 marks, but essentially they are a 5-mark question. Now, what they're looking for here is explain or describe or differentiate. This is where we need to do that detail. So essentially 5 marks, they want 5 points. They want you to be able to clearly explain that you understand a concept, or you can differentiate a concept from each other. So it's really important we get the right level of detail here. So lots of the questions are actually scenario based, because as we said, we're looking at competencies. Can you apply your knowledge? So essentially what we want is for you to look at the scenario and actually answer it based on the scenario. So some people will give wonderful answers, but not tied to the scenario. So you will lose points because essentially you're giving a generic answer, and that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for you being able to apply that knowledge to a situation, which is what you would do in real life. Okay. So before I hand back to Karen, just a few common mistakes that we tend to see on the papers, and that we tend to see people kind of coming on our courses. So the first thing we have is that people don't fulfill the prerequisite. So perhaps they haven't been a project manager for 2 to 3 years, or maybe they're seeing the PMQ as an entry into project management. It certainly isn't. If you're looking for entry, you're probably more suited towards the project fundamentals qualification, which is where we look at the basics. So what we do is we actually pre-screen people just to make sure that this is the right course for you. And if it isn't, it might just be that, maybe the PMQ is better at this point in your career, or maybe you just need a little bit more experience to make you more successful. We want to set you up for that success. Second thing is the level of preparation. This is an intensive course. There's a lot of information here, and we ask you to do some pre-work, to do some pre-reading. We give you around 6 weeks, minimum 6 weeks to actually do this. You need time in between the sessions. You need to be able to do your homework, in our case, we do sample papers. So you need to give yourself that time. We also see people using the wrong exam, people coming and saying, oh, well, I've done this paper or that paper, and it's not the current syllabus. So you're putting all that work in, but you're actually studying the wrong thing. We will guide you all the way through, to show you exactly where to look, exactly how to prepare. So it's really important that you're kind of taking that on board. The other thing is, you're not studying the full syllabus or to the right depth. We're trying to make sure that you understand. We're looking to make sure you can apply that amazing knowledge that you have and that experience that you have to the scenarios, and that you're actually using the APM best practice terminology. One of the things we often have is that people will use their industry terminology rather than the APM one. And I know that's something I struggled with when I first did it. So it's really important that you're looking at the syllabus, you're studying the correct terms. And the exam itself, making sure that you're reading the question really, really carefully. Making sure you are answering what they are asking, not what you think they are answering. Making sure that you're giving us enough information, making sure that on those explain questions, we're getting those, really detailed answers. Making sure we're connecting to the scenarios. And the big one is mismanaging time. Hour and 50 minutes, 20 questions feels like a long time. It flies by. So that's why we give you the sample questions. That's why we talk to you about revising and timing yourself to make sure that you've actually got enough time to answer the questions to the right depth. So I'm going to hand you back across to Karin now. I've talked about some of the pitfalls and some of the common mistakes. Karin's going to give you some of the keys to success.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Right, so I'm going to try to be as practical as possible here so you get some things, that sort of tangible things to take away. The first one is perhaps a little bit obvious, but make sure you take the time to review the structure of the exam and the syllabus before you get started. Helen talked about the qualification handbook. It's a free resource. It's an e-book or an e-pamphlet, maybe you could say. Nicole has already shared the link. You have a QR code to it here as well. It kind of gives you the overview about what the exam is. The other thing that we really recommend from Wellington is getting your hands on the APM PMQ official learner pack or learner study pack, they call it. Now, this is an actual book. It's quite a hefty book, kind of like the textbook for the exam, and it also has lots of practice questions and sample solutions in it. Now, this is something you have to purchase. I think it's £40. You buy it off APM's website. You have the QR code there. Or just don't pay yet if you are taking an APM PMQ preparation course with us, with Wellington. That pack is included in your course fee, in your study pack. So we provide that for you. So really recommend getting your hands on those and reading them through as soon as possible. But also, like Helen said that towards the end, make sure you firmly put on your APM PMQ hat, as it were. APM don't want to know what the process is in your company. They don't want to know what you call things in your company. They don't know what templates you use in your company, for example. They're not checking for that at all. So you need to almost disconnect all of that, like industry jargon, company jargon, and you need to translate that into APM language, APM terminology. Then next, we're going to have a look at exam technique. So in my experience, actually, over the past couple of years, based on the practice exams that we do in our course, and like Helen said, we do several, where I see most people struggle isn't necessarily with understanding the content or absorbing the content, even though there's loads of it. The challenge is usually with exam technique. And quite often I see very experienced project managers who are clearly very clever and very knowledgeable. And for that reason, maybe they are a little bit dismissive about the exam technique. And therefore, they're not able to put down the right information to the right depth on paper or on the computer screen. And then they don't get the marks and they fail the exam. So this is really important. So we need to understand the question, make sure we answer it. We need to link to scenarios, and we need to make sure we manage our time. So let's start with understanding the question and how to answer it. So I've got a couple of examples here. The first one is one that we often use in our practice exams. So I know personally people often get this one wrong. The question says, state one project process that is influenced by regulation. The first answer, you might think as you're answering it, you might look at it and go, yeah, that seems reasonable. it says health and safety and making sure we are compliant with local construction laws. You might look at that and go, yeah, that seems good. But health and safety and making sure we are compliant with local construction laws is not a project process. It doesn't answer the question. Like what you're saying there is, yeah, it's vaguely related to it. It doesn't answer the question. Answer 2 says stakeholder engagement is influenced by data protection. Stakeholder engagement is a recognized project process. Therefore, that answer is correct. Question 2 there, it says, what is one benefit to a project of managing risks? If you look at answer 1, here, whoever has put this in, actually, it was me, I mocked this up, but when I wrote this, what I've done here is I've answered another question, right? I've answered a question that was maybe, what is risk management? Like I've described here what risk management is. It's not what the question is about. You'd get 0 marks, or I would get 0 marks for answer 1 because it's not answering the question that was asked. Answer 2, however, is more about what a link to the question. So what is one benefit to a project of managing risks? And answer 2 starts straight away with, it enables the project team to identify and understand uncertainties, etc., etc. So in both these examples, answer 1, you might look and go, yeah, that looks good, but it's not answering the question, so you wouldn't get any marks. So again, to Helen's point, read the question. Make sure you answer the question that is asked. Now, in the exam platform, it's a really nice platform, actually, and I'm going to give you a link in a bit for where you can go in and have a play around. There is a built-in highlighter tool, right? So this, the picture that you have here, it's a screenshot from the exam platform, and you can see that I've highlighted a couple of words. Really recommend that you do that. So really make sure that you focus on these are the keywords. This is what my answer has to include. I'm going to share that with you in just a bit. The other thing to pay attention to, and this can sometimes seem a little bit strange or uncomfortable, sometimes APM use what they call command verbs. A command verb is effectively the first word in the question. It's what it gives you the command for what to do. It indicates what is expected from your answer and how much information to provide. Again, my perception is people look at this and then kind of ignore it in a way. But it can really make or break your answer. If you're doing a course with us, we spend quite a lot of time digging into this, and we give you a lot of examples and resources for how to help recognizing these and what's expected of them. Just to give you an example here again, so one common command verb is state. State would usually be used for the shorter questions, so the 2-mark questions. And here, basically, what they want is just tell me. Just say it really short and brief. You don't need to elaborate or explain. But if the question says something like describe this or explain this or whatever it could be, you can't just give me a 1-word answer. You're going to have to elaborate. You need to tell me, what is it? How is it? How does it work? Who's involved? Why do we do it? So here, again, I'm sticking with risk management. It's one of my favorite topics. So state 1 step in a risk management process. Analyze risk is an acceptable answer. They're not asking for more. But if they say explain 1 step in the risk management process, had you just answered analyze risk, full stop, well, that's not an explanation. You're literally just saying something or stating something. So again, here, reading the question, understanding what is asked. If you're asked to explain 1 step in the risk management process, and you just say analyze risk or identify risk or whatever you say, you wouldn't get any points because it isn't an explanation. General exam technique there. So read the question properly. Again, look at the command verb. For those long typed questions, and you know, Helen talked about that before, and you'll recognize them because they are worth 5 marks. Assume you need to elaborate. I cannot think of any example where I've seen like a sample solution or a sample question where it would be appropriate to put like 1 word or 2 words for a 5-mark question type answer. For a 5-mark question, I'm expecting 5 full sentences to get 5 full marks as a rule, right? You might have questions where there are no command verbs. I've got an example here. Here it just says, what is the project manager's responsibility? That's the question in the following areas. And then it's divided here, so it's 1 mark per each area. So in the first one, business case, for example. Here, there's no command verb. It doesn't say explain or describe, etc. My perception here is therefore that some people think, you know, oh, I can get away with just writing 1 word, etc. But hopefully you remember my key principle from the start there, that you have to show your knowledge. So even if it doesn't explicitly say, tell me what you know, you have to, right? You have nothing to gain from holding information back. So just to look at what that might look like, I'm just going to get rid of my little scribble there. Second, there we go. So how that might look, looking just specifically at the business case here, is a weak answer. Support the creation of the business case. I mean, it's kind of true, but it's very vague. A stronger answer that tells us a bit more explicit. Support the sponsor, right? That's useful information in creating the business case, for example, by providing initial estimates or clarifying the project's risk profile. Significantly clearer, shows off your knowledge a lot more. So it's better provide more than less. Show off your knowledge, but keep it relevant, of course. Helen talked about scenarios as well, and making sure that your answer is connected to the scenario. Here on this slide, you've got here's an example of a scenario. So you're in an environment where a lot of people are working remotely, and you need to gather requirements from as many stakeholders as possible quite quickly. What would be the best method and why? Again, here, answer 1, and you will get the recording of this. I realize I moved through it quite quickly. I won't read every word on the slide, but answer 1 here, it's giving us a really generic answer. It's basically saying face-to-face interviews with individual is always best, etc., etc. And generally, we might say yes, that's probably true generally. But it says explicitly in the scenario that people are working remotely or working from home. So in that, and that you need to gather requirements as soon as possible. So then, is it really the best approach to meet with individuals face-to-face? Probably not. So looking at answer 2, it's a better answer because it's taking into account the scenario. It's clearly referencing the scenario, and it's clearly setting out why we're recommending that we would do virtual conferences, for example, and it would be the better option in that scenario. So again, read the question, make sure you understand what is asked, and make sure that you tie your answer to the scenario. Answer 1 here, it's a generically good question, but it's not relevant for the scenario. So you're not demonstrating your knowledge, your ability to apply the knowledge you have to a realistic scenario. So therefore you wouldn't get any marks, actually. So a couple of tips there. So the scenario is there for a reason, right? It's not just to give you some reading and have a mental break during the exam. Use it for your answer. Make sure you reference it clearly. And sort of to some extent use a little bit of your common sense, experience, imagination to answer the scenario, but like don't exaggerate. Like it's not a creative writing exercise. You don't need to invent, like it says here, backstories or characters or anything like that. Use what's there and kind of think, what do I think would happen in that scenario based on my experience? What is likely to happen here, etc. So a few more practical tips. So in terms of revision and preparation, so Helen already said this, regardless of how you're preparing for the exam, whether you're doing a course, whether you're doing a completely independent study, you're going to have to invest a significant amount of time here. APM have previously said, based on the experience of successful candidates in the past, assume 100 hours. Okay, so we're probably looking at I'd run that up to 2.5 working weeks, or maybe 3 working weeks, like solid preparation. If you're doing a course, you could probably sort of squeeze that down a little bit, but it's still, this is not something you do in an afternoon, as it were. Prepare before you do any course, reading through course manuals and textbooks. For example, the APM study pack. Like I said, we provide that to you in advance if you do the course with us. Really recommend creating flashcards. There are digital flashcard tools. For example, there's one called Quizlet is very good. Word of warning, on Quizlet and other such tools, you can also access other people's flashcards. So there might be some friendly person who's created a revision pack and made it available to other people. I'd advise against that because, one, they might be incorrect. Like Helen said, it's we sometimes get people who have prepared but prepared for the wrong exam. And also from a pure learning point of view, there is value in you creating the flashcards yourself. That in itself is active revision. So create your own, okay? And do practice questions. Cannot stress that enough, how important that is. If you do a course with us, you have 3 realistic practice exams included, and you get individual feedback on those, which is incredibly important. If you're studying independently, then either use the practice questions in the study pack, or you can access practice papers on APM's website. Now, they've just updated it, so there are now 2 practice papers, paper 1 and paper 2. You can see a screenshot here, and you have the URL at the top. Nicole's also going to put that link in the chat for you. Highly recommend that you do those and get familiar with the platform. I'm just going to show you what the exam looks like. You've seen a couple of screenshots like this already, but have a play around so that you're familiar with it, and also that you're familiar with the types of questions you're going to get. Also helps you with your time management, because once you start an exam in the sample solution, sample paper, you can see here at the top, there's a timer. And it's counting down, so you get a good sense of time management there as well. Worth noting, you will not get feedback from APM on the practice papers. To get feedback on it, you have to do a course where that is included, such as ours. Also worth noting, if you play around a bit with the website, they have features where you can customize it a little bit. For example, if you have dyslexia, a lot of people with dyslexia benefit from using the yellow background with black text, for example, but you know yourself best. And I would say if you do not have, and if you're not aware of having, for example, dyslexia, I'll use that as an example, maybe don't play around with it, like don't create an additional complication for yourself. But if you are aware that you have anything like that, it might be worth going and have a look at the settings. And then note on time management. So it is very difficult to say how much time you should spend on each question. Because the difficulty of the questions varies. Like Helen said, we don't have a fixed pass mark in recognition of the variation of difficulty levels. So as a general guide, my advice is assume that you should spend sort of a minute or maybe just over a minute per mark. Okay, so not per question, per mark in the question. And then you can, if you start out with that, that's going to give you a little bit of a buffer in the total time. So that means then that if you have the trickier scenario questions, etc., then you dedicate more time there. Now, I think it would be a fallacy to say that the multiple choice questions are super simple. You don't have to worry about those. That's not correct, because sometimes they're based on a scenario. There might be a little bit more reading. The question can be quite complex. But if we start with that as a sort of a rule of thumb, 1 minute per mark, and then we try to move on to the next question when we can. But then recognizing then that we need to spend a little bit more time on some questions. The more practice questions you do and the more practice exams you do, the better you will know yourself. And that will also help you see, for my personal style, does it make sense that I start with all the long response questions and do those first? Or does it make more sense that I cover all the shorter questions first and then tackle the long ones towards the end? Everybody's different. It is worth noting that the exams, even though the questions are randomized, like the content of the questions are randomized, APM have gone to quite great lengths in terms of the design of the exam. And they've taken into account how most people work in terms of cognitive load and fatigue. So the exam is designed so that the questions appear in an order to make it as accessible as possible for most people. So again, I'd probably advise against being too clever here and over engineering in what order you do the questions. But the more practice exams you do, the better you will know yourself, and then you can make decisions based on that. Final, really practical things. Prepare your setup for the exam so that you're ready on the day. I should probably say here, I should probably add on this actually, the day before you actually take the exam, if possible. The exam now are taken in a virtual or remotely invigilated setup. That means you would either do it with a registered invigilator, like for example Wellington, or you can book it directly with APM. But for the duration of the exam, you need to be visible to an invigilator. So you do the exam on your computer, and then you join either a Teams or a Zoom meeting on a separate device, like your phone or a tablet, etc., so that you can film yourself for the entire time you're taking the exam. So prepare for that in advance. Set up your desk, have a comfy chair, make sure you are clearly visible for the invigilator, remove all notes, etc., from your desk. Charge the devices. Like if you run out of battery in your second device that is filming you, then your exam will not be valid. Wear comfy clothes and make sure you can't be disrupted, right? You cannot be in an open space office. You cannot be in a shared office. You cannot be in any space that you're sharing with other people. Can't be in a cafe, for example. So, lock the door, put a sign on the door, make sure you turn off all email qualifications and Teams, any other messaging systems, put away your smart devices, or all of that stuff. Basically think, if you were taking an exam in school, what would that be? Or how would that need to be set up? Final thing, I've talked about people who may have dyslexia before. If you do have any condition, it could be dyslexia, it could be other things as well, either learning disabilities or physical disabilities. It could even be a temporary injury or other condition that might limit your ability to do the exam on the same terms as everybody else, whereas the majority of people. In that case, APM will make adjustments for you. And it's very important that you apply for that adjustment so that you get the best support. It needs to be supported by medical documents, like a letter from a doctor, etc. Now, if you do the exam with Wellington, we will help you with this. Your trainer will help you through all of that. But we need a little bit of time. Usually APM need 3 weeks notice before an exam to set this up. So just make your trainer aware, and then we'll help you with the rest of it. I'm just sharing, put up on the screen, just my contact details. You have my email there in case you want to reach out. There's also a QR code that you can scan with your phone. I'm just going to leave that up for a minute, and then I'm going to switch over and show you Helen's contact details instead, just so you can see that clearly. So hopefully you have found this useful, and hopefully there were some sort of practical things to take away there for you. But I guess if I had to summarize, I'd say remember that you have to show your knowledge, right? That's what this is about. Make sure you study the right syllabus and you cover the entire syllabus, and focus on that exam technique. Don't dismiss it, right? And make sure that you read the questions properly, that you understand the different types of questions, And most of all, do as many practice questions as you can, either in the APM PMQ study pack. Again, that's included in the course if you do it with us. Look at the practice papers on APM's website. It's worth doing that just to familiarize yourself with the exam platform. And again, if you're doing the exam, the course and the exams through us, then make sure you block the time to do all the revision and the practice exams that we recommend that you do.